St Albert's infants. So I have looked out one of my favourite books, and this is my book from when I was a little girl, and this used to be read to me all the time. I found it so funny. It was my absolute favourite. So it's The Twits, and it's by Roald Dahl, and it is illustrated by Quentin Blake. So I wonder, do we think that's the Twits? Will we read and see if we can find out? So I will read a couple of chapters, and then I will stop the video and I'll record another couple of chapters on another video so that you can watch it over a couple of days. So let's get started. I wonder who these people are. Let's see. Hairy faces. What a lot of hairy-faced men there are around nowadays. When a man grows hair all over his face, it is impossible to tell what he really looks like. Perhaps that's why he does it. He'd rather you didn't know. Then there's the problem of washing. When the very hairy ones wash their faces, it must be as big a job as when you or I wash the hair on our heads. So what I want to know is, how often do all of these hairy-faced men wash their faces? Is it once a week, like us, on a Sunday night? Or do they shampoo it? Do they use a hairdryer? Do they rub hair tonic in to stop their faces from going bald? Do they go to the barber to have their hairy faces cut and trimmed? Or do they do it themselves in front of the bathroom mirror with the nail scissors? I just don't know. But next time you see a man with a hairy face, which will probably be as soon as you step out onto the street, maybe you will look at him more closely and start wondering about some of these things too. Maybe you will. For chapter 1. Mr. Twit. Mr. Twit was one of these very hairy-faced men. The whole of his face, except from his forehead, his eyes and his nose, was covered in thick hair. The stuff even sprouted in revolting tufts out of his nostrils and his ear holes. Mr. Twit felt that his hairiness made him look terrifically wise and grand, but in truth he was neither of these things. Mr. Twit was a twit. He was born a twit, and now at the age of 60 he was an even bigger twit than ever. The hair on Mr. Twit's face didn't go smooth and matted as it does on most hairy-faced men. It grew in spikes and stuck out straight like the bristles of a hairbrush. And how often did Mr. Twit wash his bristly, nail-brushy face of his? The answer is never. Not even on Sundays. He hadn't washed it for years. Ugh, that doesn't sound very nice. As you know, an ordinary unhairy face like yours or mine simply gets a bit smudgy if it's not washed often enough. And there's nothing so awful about that. But a hairy face is a very different matter. Things cling to the hairs, especially food. Things like gravy go right in among the hairs and stay there. You and I could wipe our smooth faces with a flannel and we would quickly look more or less right again. But the hairy men cannot do that. We can also, if we are careful, eat our meals without spreading food all over our faces. But not so with these hairy men. Watch carefully next time you see a hairy man eating his lunch, and you will notice that even if he opens his mouth very wide, it is impossible for him to get a spoonful of beef stew or ice cream and chocolate sauce into it without leaving it with some around on the hairs. Mr. Twit didn't even bother to open his mouth wide when he ate. As a result, and because he never washed his face, there were always hundreds of bits of old breakfast and lunches and suppers sticking to the hairs around his face. They weren't big bits, mind you, because he used to wipe them off with the back of his hand or on his sleeve while he was eating. But if you look closely, not that you'd ever want to, you would see tiny little specks of dried up scrambled eggs stuck to the hairs, and spinach and tomato ketchup, and fish fingers and minced chicken livers, all of those other disgusting things that Mr. Twit liked to eat. There he is, with all of those bits stuck to his beard. Oh, and then you've also got the things that are stuck in his beard. So we have tinned sardines, we have Stilton cheese, and cornflakes. Ugh. If you ever looked closer at it, hold your noses, ladies and gentlemen, If you peered deep into the moustachy bristles sticking out over his upper lip, you'd probably see much larger objects that had escaped the wipe of his hand. Things that had been there for months and months, like pieces of maggoty green cheese or mouldy old cornflakes, or even the slimy tail of a tinned sardine. Because of all of this, Mr. Twit never really looked hungry. By sticking out his tongue and curling it sideways to explore the hairy jungle around his mouth, he would always be able to find a tasty morsel here or there to nibble on. What I am trying to tell you is that Mr. Twit was full and a smelly old man. He was also an extremely horrid old man, as you will find out in a moment. Mrs. Twit. Mrs. Twit was no better than her husband. She did not, of course, have a hairy face. It was a pity she didn't, because at any rate, that would have hidden some of her fearful ugliness. Take a look at her. There she's there. She's not a very good looking lady, is she? Have you ever seen a woman with an uglier face than that? I doubt it. But the funny thing is that Mrs. Twit wasn't born ugly. She'd quite a nice face when she was young. The ugliness had grown upon her year by year as she got older. Why would that happen? I'll tell you why. If a person has ugly thoughts, it begins to show on their face. And when that person has ugly thoughts every day, every week, every year, the face gets uglier and uglier until it gets so ugly you can hardly bear to look at it. An ugly person who has good thoughts cannot ever be ugly. You can have a wonky nose and a crooked mouth and a double chin and a stick-out teeth, but if you have good thoughts, they will shine out of your face like the sunbeams and you'll always look lovely. There's Mrs. Twit when she was younger, and she just gets uglier and uglier as those ugly thoughts come from her. Or you could have a crooked nose, you could have weird teeth and hair, but you would look lovely because you would have lovely thoughts. Nothing shone out of Mrs. Twit's face. In her right hand she carried a walking stick. She used to tell people that this is because she had warts growing on the sole of her left foot and walking was painful. But the real reason she carried a stick was that she could hit things. Things like dogs and cats and small children. And then there was the glass eye. Mrs. Twit had a glass eye that was always looking the other way. The glass eye. You can play a lot of tricks with a glass eye because you can take it out and pop it back in again and again anytime you like. You bet your life that Mrs. Twit knew all of the tricks. One morning she took out her glass eye and dropped it into Mr. Twit's mug of beer when he wasn't looking. Mr. Twit sat there drinking his beer slowly. The froth made a white ring on the hairs around his mouth. He wiped the white froth onto his sleeve and wiped his sleeve on his trousers. You're plotting something, Mrs. Twit said, keeping her back turned so she wouldn't see her taking her glass eye out. Whatever. Whenever you go quiet like that, I know you're well and plotting something. Mrs. Twit was right. Mr. Twit was plotting away like mad. He was trying to think up a really nasty trick he could play on his wife that day. You'd better be careful, Mrs. Twit said, because when I see you starting to plot, I watch you like a wombat. There he's there, drinking. Oh, do shut up, you old hag, Mr. Twit said. He went on drinking his beer and his evil mind kept working away on the latest horrid trick he was going to play on the old woman. Suddenly, as Mr. Twit tipped the last drop of his beer down his throat, he caught sight of Mrs. Twit's awful glass eye staring back up at him. It made him jump. I told you I was watching you, cackled Mrs. Twit. I've got eyes everywhere, so you better be careful. And there it is, the eye at the bottom of the mug. Ooh, that doesn't look very nice. The frog. To pay her back to the glass eye in his beer, Mr. Twit decided he would put a frog in Mrs. Twit's bed. He caught a big one down by the pond and carried it back secretly in a box. That night, when Mrs. Twit was in her bathroom getting ready for bed, Mr. Twit slipped the frog between her sheets. Then he got into his own bed and waited for the fun to begin. Mrs. Twit came back and climbed into her bed and put out the light. She lay there in the dark, scratching her tummy. Her tummy was itchy. Dirty old hags like that always have itchy tummies. Then, all at once, she felt something cold and slimy crawling over her feet. She screamed. "What's the matter with you?" Mr. Twit said. "Help!" screamed Mrs. Twit, bouncing about. "There's something in my bed!" "I'll bet it's that giant skillywigger I saw on the floor just now," said Mr. Twit. "That what?" screamed Mrs. Twit. "I tried to kill it, but it got away," Mr. Twit said. "It's got teeth like screwdrivers." "Help!" screamed Mrs. Twit. "Save me! It's all over my feet!" "I'll bite off your toes," said Mr. Twit. Mrs. Twit fainted. Mr. Twit got out of bed and fetched a jug of cold water. He poured the water over Mrs. Twit's head to revive her. The frog crawled up from under the sheets and to get nearer the water. There they are in bed, just before the fright. It started jumping about on her pillow. Frogs love water. This one was having a good time. When Mrs. Twit came to, the frog had just jumped onto her face. This is not a nice thing to happen to anyone in bed at night. She screamed again. So there she's there. Frog jumped up when she was still asleep, and now it's on her face. "By golly, it is a giant skillywiggler," said Mr. Twit. "It'll bite off your nose." Mrs. Twit leapt out of bed and flew downstairs and spent the night on the sofa. The frog went to sleep on her pillow. That looks like a comfy frog. The wormy spaghetti. The next day, to pay Mr. Twit back for the frog trick, Mrs. Twit sneaked out into the garden and dug up some worms. She chose big, long ones and put them into the tin and carried them back to the house under her apron. At 1 o'clock, she cooked spaghetti for lunch, and she mixed the worms in with his spaghetti, but only into her husband's plate. The worms didn't show because everything was covered with tomato sauce and sprinkled with cheese. And go and sat down for their lunch. "Hey, my spaghetti's moving," cried Mr. Twit, poking around with his fork. "It's a new kind," Mrs. Twit said, taking a mouthful from her own plate, which of course had no worms. "It's called squidgy spaghetti. It's delicious. Eat it up while it's nice and hot." Mr. Twit started eating, twisting the long tomato-covered strings around his fork and shoveling them into his mouth. Soon there was tomato sauce all over his hairy chin. "It's not as good as the ordinary kind," he said, taking it with a mouthful. "It's too squishy." "I'm finding it very tasty," Mrs. Twit said. She was watching him from the other side of the table. It gave her great pleasure to watch him eating worms. "I find it rather bitter," said Mr. Twit. "It's got a distinct bitty flavour. Buy the other kind next time." So there he is, he's finished off his worm spaghetti. Ugh. Mrs. Twit waited until Mr. Twit had eaten the whole plateful. Then she said, "You want to know why your spaghetti was squishy?" Mr. Twit wiped the tomato sauce from his beard from the corner of the tablecloth. "Why?" he said. "And why it had a nasty bitter taste?" "Why?" he said. "Because it was worms!" cried Mrs. Twit, clapping her hands and stomping her feet with the floor and rocking with horrible laughter. And we'll stop there and we'll come back for another chapter and another video. I wonder what happens next. Can you think of any other pranks that you think they might play? Let's come back and check.